What if the NFL draft's greatest controversy concerned those who were silenced rather than those who were selected? One incident has kicked off a chain reaction that hasn't subsided in a league that is based on performance, competition, and openness. Shedeur Sanders, a divisive quarterback with the stats, poise, and background to command attention, was the target of a media frenzy. But more because of what we aren't permitted to witness than because of what he said. The NFL draft is said to be based on leadership, tape, and merit. However, something changed after a while. Interview footage of Jackson Dart, a rising quarterback, prospect who raised many eyebrows, was made public by the New York Giants. When the video was made public, it wasn't a positive one. According to several accounts, it was uncomfortable, stressful, and even disappointing. Here's the twist though. Shedeur Sanders also did an interview with the Giants, but his video was never made public, leaked, or even acknowledged. It raised important questions in the quiet. Why can we examine one player while excluding the other? What about Sanders' interview was so damaging or perhaps so revealing that it had to be kept secret? Analysts and fans started to ask for clarification. Was the problem actually with Sanders? Or was a story being developed in the background? Perhaps Sanders was never given a fair chance if this was about something more profound, like ego, image, or control. But if it was just about football, the numbers only tell one narrative. This is where the story starts. When Jackson Dart's interview video with the New York Giants was made public, the controversy's first domino dropped. NFL insiders called it embarrassing, disheartening, and even harmful. It was the type of video that immediately altered public opinion. Dart appeared agitated and unprepared. You wouldn't exactly put your trust in him to run a franchise. The Giants' decision to release that video was not only audacious, but also vicious. Then the quiet struck. Shedeur Sanders, who apparently also had a conversation with the Giants, had his interview discreetly dismissed. There's only speculation, no video, no leaks, and no proof of what actually happened. According to some, it didn't go well. He walked out, according to others. Some people said he just wasn't humble enough. But since no one viewed the recording, none of it could be confirmed. The questions then started to come. Why isn't Sanders' video released along with Dart's? If both interviews were conducted and openness is the aim, why do we not know about more well-known applicants? The Giants began to get direct criticism from fans. They were accused by some of shielding themselves from criticism. Some others think the group was attempting to squash a story before it got out of control. The NFL is not a gullible community. Optics are important, they know. However, it's no longer about football when one player is openly criticized while another is marginalized. It has to do with image control. Furthermore, the stillness surrounding Shedeur Sanders was louder than any video could have been. What precisely were they concealing then? NFL draft analysts had already decided on Shedeur Sanders long before the interviews even entered the news. Albert Breer's voice was among the loudest. He claimed that Sanders was obviously behind Cam Ward and Jackson Dart in terms of draft value. Like gospel, he wasn't afraid to use it often in tweets, interviews, and publications. The hierarchy made sense to Breer, Sanders, Dart, and Ward. Here's the problem though. The figures on the tape convey a completely different tale when compared. Shedeur Sanders had an astounding 74% completion rate at the end of his career. At any level, that's outstanding, particularly in tense televised matches. In contrast, Cam Ward's completion rate was only 67.2%, while Jackson Dart's was 69.3%. There is a significant variation in efficiency. It demonstrates that Shedeur wasn't merely acting. He was making wise, accurate decisions and flourishing under duress. Sanders' score was 37. That is only too short of the 39 of Cam Ward, with 29. Jackson Dart fell behind. Additionally, Sanders constantly demonstrated maturity and discipline in his decision-making and ball security. Why, therefore, did Breyer and others disregard him? Some claim that systemic prejudice is to blame. Sanders performed for his dad. He received media coverage. Flash, style, and headlines were all present. Perhaps some traditional scouts were offended by that. However, if football is about leadership, winning, and output, then Shedeur Sanders met all the requirements. He merely checked the box that fit the story that some people were adamant about promoting. When Colin Cowherd, who never holds back, offered his opinion on Deion Sanders' Giants interview, the rumor mill burst into flames. He referred to it as the worst he had ever witnessed. Even for a coward, that is a powerful assertion. However, the story he shared shocked the sports media. Cowherd claims that Sanders said, "Maybe I'm not the guy for you," in response to the Giants' question about a bad game scenario, asking what went wrong and how he would repair it. It was a grenade-like quote. He was attacked on social media. He was portrayed by critics as conceited, unprepared, and defiant. They claimed that he lacked maturity, insight, and confidence. His mental toughness was even questioned by others. That one-liner turned into a scarlet letter in a league where every word matters. However, a more complex version of the story surfaced when the dust settled. According to NFL insider Albert Breer, Sanders was shown a video reel that was full of errors and broken plays. In order to determine what went wrong, he was requested to examine the video. The catch? The errors weren't always obvious. It had the feel of a trap. Sanders lost his temper because he believed the evaluation process was incorrect. That's where the phrase, "I'm not the guy for you," originated. Not out of weakness, but out of frustration. Consider it. Wouldn't you feel the same way if you were a young quarterback, being asked to analyze plays without any clear details under duress in a sterile interview room? The worst interview ever didn't seem like a bust all of a sudden. It had the sound of a setup, openness. The NFL asserts that this is its foundation. However, nothing emerged when it came time to make the Shedeur Sanders interview film public. The same as what happened with Jackson Dart, the stillness was deafening, not just suspicious. Why release one video and not the other? Was a question that fans kept posing. What is concealed from the public in Sanders' interview? Did the Giants believe it would damage their reputation? Were they concerned about the reaction to the way the interview was conducted? Even worse, was there evidence on the tape indicating the criticism was overblown? Because wouldn't it be fair to let us observe the exchange for ourselves if we were to evaluate Sanders' attitude or mindset based on rumors? Allow the video to speak for itself. Does it support or refute the narrative? With Jackson Dart, that is what transpired. His embarrassing moments were exposed. It was up to the fans to determine whether it was nerves or something more serious. However, in Sanders' situation, nobody had the opportunity. Worse and worse, the media seized upon the story without supporting data. They used a one-liner when they ran, "I might not be the right man for you." Like that's all there is to it. Just a quote without a face, no setting, no tone, and no context. It's difficult to avoid wondering if this had to do with football or framing. Wouldn't the Giants want to show that Sanders ruined the interview? If you were really immature, wouldn't the video's release validate their assessment? However, they didn't. And the biggest warning sign of all is that quiet. Another well-known figure entered the discussion as the dispute was raging. Newton Cam, the outspoken individual and former NFL MVP, didn't mince words. During an interview with Stephen A. Smith, Cam proposed that Shedeur Sanders was prone to avoid genuine competition. The suggestion that Sanders was overly picky about where he wanted to play, even overly entitled. Newton perceived it as conceit. A young quarterback pretending to be successful. The remarks were quite harsh. Newton is simply not a critic. He is a person who has endured the strain, endured the conflagration, and continues to bear the wounds. People, therefore, pay attention when he speaks. Was this a generational ego clash with the new wave, or was he being fair? After all, Shedeur Sanders is more than just a mere potential. He is the son of head coach and media legend Deion Sanders. His professional life has always been scrutinized. Every action is examined and every decision is questioned. Therefore, he wasn't being lazy when he mentioned his liking for particular clubs or his outlook for the future. Clarity was the source of it. Is that leadership or conceit? The NFL adores quarterbacks who exude confidence. In their peak Cam Newton, Aaron Rodgers, and Joe Burrow all strolled into interviews with their chests out. But it was called ego when Sanders did it. It is difficult to overlook that double standard, regardless of its causes, legacy, ethnicity, or personality. Furthermore, it raises the question of whether Cam Newton was criticizing Sanders or extrapolating his own past onto him. Shedeur Sanders only needed a few OTAA practices with the Cleveland Browns to completely change the course of all the criticism he received prior to the selection. The least number of reps went to Sanders. He lacked the early buzz of youngster Dylan Gabriel and the seasoned presence of Joe Flacco. He did, however, have touchdowns, efficiency, and poise. Performance reports and camp insiders claim that Shedeur completed just 7 pass attempts while throwing 3 touchdowns and no interceptions. That is clinical, not simply efficient. Flacco, on the other hand, had 1 touchdown and a pick while going 9 for 14. Gabriel threw an intercept while maintaining a respectable volume. Sanders accomplished more with fewer opportunities. The doubters abruptly began to turn around. One of his most vocal opponents prior to the draft, Colin Cowherd, even went on the air to say, "I've seen it now." He even urged Shedeur to receive first-team reps after deeming him the Browns camp's most promising quarterback. Take a moment to process that. Sanders should start over a Super Bowl MVP and a high-potential rookie, according to the same person who claimed that Sanders delivered the worst interview he had ever witnessed. The NFL is a league of what have you done recently. Additionally, Shedeur has been quite active lately. What was altered? It's all about perception, nothing about Sanders. He was more than just a media sensation or the son of a coach. He was a true NFL talent who excelled on the field where it counted. And he made the media and the league take notice in a matter of seconds. This is the real deal. Football was never the only topic of contention. Control, optics, the old guard defending its reputation, and the media acting as judge, jury, and executioner were all factors. The plot was established as soon as Shedeur Sanders announced the draft. The Deion son. Flamboyant, self-assured, perhaps overconfident. Scouts discussed coach's son syndrome in whispers. Experts discussed his media bubble. And everything became fuel for a conflagration the instant he retreated even a little. The same attributes were complimented for other quarterbacks, some of whom were less skilled and accomplished. Swagger took charge, vision replaced selectivity. For Sanders, it turned into vanity. It is impossible to overlook the double standard. The language that was spoken around him also altered. While others voice concerns, he complains. While others methodically plan their careers, he stays out of competitions. While others are underappreciated, he is overhyped. Race, heritage, and personality all influence the way stories are written. Here's what the media didn't anticipate, though. With this play, Sanders appears and silences the detractors. The narrative begins to change when you lead one of America's most watched college teams, throw 37 touchdowns, complete 74% of your passes, and then dominate your first NFL snaps. It must be done, not because the media wants it to. There's no story about Shedeur Sanders. No amount of spin from the media can change the fact that he is a reality. The question must eventually be posed. Did the NFL misinterpret Shedeur Sanders? Entirely? They used unconfirmed reports to form their opinion of his character. One phrase taken out of context caused them to doubt his assurance. Perception and whispers are allowed to take precedence over recorded statistics. Worst of all, they let a story determine his worth. However, the outcomes now speak for themselves. Sanders has already pushed his way into the discussion after only a few workouts. He works effectively. He's calm. He obviously has a knack for the game. And suddenly, the same analysts who wrote him off are changing their minds. Why did it take so long then? Perhaps the system is to blame. The foundation of the NFL combine and interview process is making snap decisions. Who is polished? Who provides the correct responses? However, what if the system isn't made to identify actual rivals? What if it's designed to identify quarterbacks who comply? Sanders wasn't the typical candidate. He failed to provide the responses they were looking for. He questioned the procedure. Additionally, he received punishment for his critical thinking rather than praise. And now that he has shown himself in OUTRAGED, the NFL finds itself in an odd situation. Either they reiterate the previous narrative, or they acknowledge they made a mistake. Shedeur Sanders, however, isn't holding out. He is progressing play by play, rep by rep. The league also has to stay up to date. So here we are. One lost video, one interview, and one quarterback caused a stir. Shedeur Sanders had to deal with more than just a bad assessment. He had to contend with a system that prioritized judgment above inquiry. The Giants' interview could have been uncomfortable. It may have been annoying. It could have been sentimental. However, they never let us see it, so we are unaware. Rather, the media created a story. They created a narrative that portrayed Sanders as the antagonist. Exaggerated, conceited, and immature. But now that the film is rolling and the pads are on, the reality is beginning to show through the gaps. He is not the issue. He was never. He is composed. He's right. He works effectively. He is ascending through the Browns' quarterback room. And despite media spin, not because of it. The NFL must now confront a difficult question. Did we make a mistake? Due to the fact that the numbers are honest. The performances are truthful. The leadership is honest. Only the story did. Let this serve as a lesson for coaches, fans, and scouts. Keep your vision clear of perception. Don't allow concealed video to overpower the facts. Additionally, don't rely on a quarterback who is just starting out. What are your thoughts then? Was Shedeur Sanders given an unfair evaluation? Was media spin stealing his reputation? Or did the quiet have a deeper meaning? I appreciate you watching. This is the Whoa headquarters. Please subscribe and like the video. I'll be back tomorrow with more football-related news.